Hello, and welcome to our latest Kinetic session. I'm Kingsley Johnson, and each week I invite elite athletes, business owners, and thought leaders to share their strategies, techniques, and ideas to achieve more. The purpose of these sessions is to provide a little inspiration to help us all navigate these exceptional times. At Kinetic PD, our team of world-class athletes and business trainers help organisations embed the psychology of elite sport in their teams. And we do this to drive high performance and well-being at work. Our interactive workshops, professional coaching programs, and recruitment support services all help to embed the behaviours, attitudes, and mindsets to achieve more. Thank you for taking the time to listen to our session, and enjoy. Of Chitzo, to discuss strategy for small and medium-sized businesses and ice hockey. Richard's project management and business consultancy experience focused on differentiation, innovation, and optimization of SME and corporate businesses across a wide variety of sectors. His achievements and experience provide lots of inspiration and food for thought for business owners. Thank you for joining me today, Richard. It's really fantastic to have you with us, and I wondered if you'd be kind enough to share some information on your sort of journey, your career to date, and some of the achievements that you're particularly proud of in your career.
Okay, so first of all, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here with you, Kingsley. So thanks for the opportunity to speak. So in terms of my career to date, well, it probably seems quite lengthy now, looking back over the last 20 years. So started at what's now known as National Grid. At the time, it was called Transco. So that's the UK's biggest utility provider. And I was fortunate enough there to gain some exposure on some pretty good projects and also be guided by some really interesting people in that arena. So some really good exposure from there that's really laid the foundations for the kind of 19 years that have followed on from there. So started off in project management and in the project world, which gives you a really good flavour for how businesses are changing, because managing projects allows you to work in an environment where you're delivering changes to any business. Fortunately for me, I worked on some rather large scale changes at National Grid that were really exciting, and since there really always stayed in some kind of change capacity, whether that's business transformation or more strategic change, driving new ideas and changes into different sized businesses. So as a variation of a theme, it's always been focused on developing businesses to make them more performant, to make them more lean and operate in a better way in some way, shape or form, whether that's regulatory change, whether that's digital transformation, whether it's driving new strategies in, but it's all about changing business for the better and making or supporting businesses to achieve their goals and visions. So exciting, it's an exciting place to be involved with when you're working in change. You talked about achievements I'm particularly proud of. So there could be highlights from across the career, which I'm pleased with. Every time you deliver something that delivers benefit into a business, you get a sense of achievement because that business will go on to be stronger and better. But I think for me, one of the key moments in my career was a big challenge that I had when I got the opportunity to go over and work in Malta. So I took a random phone call whilst I was up a mountain in Wales a number of years ago, back in 2009. And in those days, when a strange number came up on your phone, you didn't think it was some kind of scam call. So I thought, I'll take this call. Seems interesting. took the call and had a wonderful lady on the other end of the phone who basically said, listen, we've been giving your details recommended to us as somebody that can help us out. I said, okay, that sounds interesting. And she went on to explain how they owned a medieval castello based over in Malta, and they wanted to do something with it, which wasn't much to go on. And I kindly explained that I was at the top of a mountain in Wales at the time. I'll have to call you back. Called back. Subsequent conversations led to me pretty much a couple of weeks later driving over to Malta and faced with a pretty blank canvas of a medieval castello that had some history behind it that they wanted to open up as a venue. Ultimately, the process of defining what that might be, what that might look like, what that looks like commercially, and then all of the different facets of the business, and really leading that piece of work through to delivery and post opening. And what we actually delivered was the most diverse tourist destination or venue in Malta. It was inaugurated by the Prime Minister of Malta, and we had a representative from the Vatican come and give us a gift of peace, because the link to the building itself was linked back to a medieval order of the knights called the Knights of St. John, so also known as the Knights of Malta. So it was a very interesting time, really varied, but to deliver such a fundamentally different proposition into a place. So we said it was the most diverse tourism destination in Malta, and Malta is a tourism destination. So you're up there competing with some pretty impressive venues that already exist. We had things like archery, we had falconry displays, we had an audio visual show which actually won an award for for its documentary. We had recreated the castello as it would have been back in the earlier times. We had a coffee shop, we had a wine bar, we had an art gallery, we had a nature trail, we had lots of different things going on at this one site. We had medieval banquets. It was a really fun time, and to take that from a blank canvas through to delivery, I've probably got to say that was one of the highlights that I refer back to.
That's a really fantastic story, and it's just so amazing in terms of that blank canvas and moving that to an award-winning venue where there was such a diverse range of different elements to help to develop that as a business as well. That kind of gives me a bit of food for thought, because I want to come back to that in a second. I also want to ask you about ice hockey.
I've only played ice hockey for the last couple of years, really, so I won't reveal my age, but I'm no spring chicken. But it was through a random conversation at work a few years ago with one of my colleagues, and ultimately he said, come down and give it a go. And I'm that kind of person whereby that sounds really interesting. I'd always wanted to play ice hockey in some way, and I thought, well, if they're willing to take a complete novice on, then go and give it a try. As it happens, a really fantastic group of guys who welcomed me with open arms into the team, and I'm still playing ice hockey now a few years later for the same team, and it's been a really enjoyable experience, one that's really challenged me to learn new skills. So ice hockey is the world's fastest team sport. We don't play at any level that requires any great speed. However, what it does do is, you have to think about many things at different times. You're standing on a very thin blade of steel on ice, and you'll know, as many others, it's not easy to stand up on ice, especially when you've only got a thin blade holding you up. You've then got to move at speed. You've got to move with a stick and keep focus on a puck, which is moving even faster. And then, of course, you've got to keep your eyes out for the people who are trying to put you through the sideboards and, quite frankly, just stop you in your tracks. So many things to take into consideration, which provides mental and physical challenges, which is something that I really enjoyed, and obviously learning the new techniques and skills that come along with that. So that's why I got into that and stuck with it.
Because of the work that we do, we often help organizations to take some of the lessons and values from sport so they can be applied in business. So in your ice hockey journey so far, you mentioned that necessity to obviously learn new skills, but also to take into account all of these opposing sort of requirements and needs and things that are striving for your attention. So have you noticed any changes in yourself in the last couple of years when it comes to sort of business operations and dealing with people?
I don't think directly from ice hockey, but I think the analogy that you use is really good. I think sports in general, there is so much that businesses can learn from a sporting environment. So certainly in terms of team performance, a lot of focus over the more recent years of mine has been on high performing organizations and how to drive change, people change, culture change, as well as obviously the process and technology side of things. It's very much how do you drive performance into a business environment. And I think the sporting world can provide so many great examples when you look at individual and team sports as to how you can adopt the mentalities, the mindsets of high performing athletes and take that into a business setting. Not always a direct correlation, but you can certainly take the principles of what happens in a sporting setting. Look at how individual sportsmen need to dedicate themselves to their development. You can bring that into the workplace and look at individual levels as how people are and should be dedicated to developing themselves to their expertise, and also more of the team ethic, the teamwork, the principles of achieving goals, working towards targets, how to set those targets and how to manage expectations. There's so many different facets to sport that you can take and utilize in a business setting. It's for me, there's always been a close synergy that I try and utilize whenever you can, and that people can relate to.
Yes, and like you say, that focus on performance and utilizing some of the lessons around mindset and attitude and those behaviors. And I loved when you talked about those sort of that athlete mentality of an athlete's role and a coach's role is to improve the athlete's performance. And often within workplaces, we don't necessarily see that type of approach applied to an individual. It may be a case of sometimes people are just expected to work and they're just given more work because they're good, but that drive to continuously develop on a day-to-day basis is not often something that we see much of. And I also really enjoyed your point about the ice hockey team and that element of the team bond, and that being such a large factor in terms of your enjoyment. And like you say, when you look at how that can be applied in the workplace, often there are potential improvements in terms of those team developments.
Yeah. I mean, for me, like I said, if you look at what a high performance organization is based on the principles of, it's about maximizing the potential within your workforce or your people.
Yeah.
And if that was the focus for most, when you talked about coaches and athletes working together, and the coach's role is to help develop those people within his team or those athletes under his control, so to really help deliver the best out of them. And that's what a manager or a leader's role in any organization should be. Again, it's far more complex than that, but when you talk about it in principle, that's how people should view themselves, as that coach or as that manager, rather than just as a manager or a leader within a business.
Because like you say, I think sometimes it is quite difficult for maybe new managers or for leaders that have built successful companies in the past, and maybe their approach is quite singular or dogmatic in a way. So it's not necessarily viewing themselves as that coach type person. Maybe it's more of I'm here, I have responsibilities, people should be following what I'm doing, as opposed to that concept that some people have of, well, if I can elevate my team and the behaviors in my team, then we're going to produce more. And there is I guess, an element that sometimes maybe people could feel a bit like, why should I be making myself redundant? When it's not about that, it's about developing the people that are in your sphere of influence.
Yeah, and what you're actually doing is the opposite. You're not making yourself redundant. You're making yourself, even more required. And I think, a really good example, so many times that I've seen in a corporate environment, is where very good technical people are given managerial or leadership roles, but then aren't given the support to transition into, fantastic technical capabilities, but never had that management or leadership experience. Now it's the responsibility of their leadership and managers to develop them in the same way that they should then in turn develop their team. So it happens at every level of the structure. So however many spans and layers you have in your organization, it should happen at every level from the top to the bottom. And only by doing that, you're really going to progress to being a really high performing organization as a whole.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you say, leadership isn't easy. Helping to instill those skills and abilities in others is not necessarily the most straightforward. And like you, we experience many organizations that have promoted people that are very technically good at their role, but it's the people side, the support to develop those areas or it could be improved, I would say.
Yeah, and what we have definitely seen over the last few years is a massive shift towards driving that type of awareness and behaviour into more organisations, and I think we are starting to see more and more people become that more holistic leader, more rounded manager by taking these other things into consideration. So we're definitely moving in the right direction, I think, in the main. But that said, there's still a long way to go in a lot of areas.
Yeah, and I think one of the sort of areas that I often think about is, like you say, if you bring it back to sports, if I think of a time when I've played in a team and we've achieved success, there are certain characteristics and fundamentals in that team. And then when I think about workplace teams, or when I've worked on particular projects for particular organizations, sometimes it's not as obvious to see those transferred into the workplace. So for example, I could look at examples where maybe trust wasn't as high in the team because morale had been affected, there was uncertainty, maybe like you say, the technical manager didn't have the capabilities to drive that trust or build that trust in their team. But then the leadership weren't providing maybe the support, the techniques, the methods, the mindset, which you often find in sport, because without trust in sport, you're not going to get very far. And I think it's quite fascinating in organizations.
Well, if we flip that example on its head and take it out of a business context and put it into a sporting one, it's quite easy to see not the best footballers become the best footballing managers. And actually, if you look at the best or the deemed to be the best footballing managers over the last few years, most of them were not top players. There are some top players out there that have become top managers, but actually you could reference at least half a dozen really top football managers that weren't elite or highest level in their playing days.
Yeah, and like you say, I mean, that instantly makes me think of Sir Alex Ferguson. He played, but he wasn't that top elite. You think of Jurgen Klopp. Look at some of the amazing things he's currently doing with Liverpool, but he wasn't he didn't reach the highest echelons of football or world football.
So yeah, it's really interesting. And one thing, actually, using that sporting analogy is, it's all about communication. It's all about clarity, direction, and ensuring people. You go to the trust. If people have got clarity over their direction, it's been communicated clearly what the goals are. People know what their responsibilities are individually and collectively. That's when you start to get that cohesion. You start to get that trust. And that's when you start to really see that, that train moving at high speed. And, when I was coaching football, when I was coaching youth football, the first thing that we would do at the start of every season is put our objectives down, our goal for the season. What's our goal for the season? The first goal is to finish higher than we did last season, for example, or to win more games than we lose. Depending on the previous season's performance, you would set yourself a goal that was in order to develop and proceed and improve on the previous season performance. So you set that out at the start, and that is a great reference point at any point in the season to keep referring back to what is our goal for the season. Then you move on to how do we achieve that? Well, in a football sense, we talk about we have to be tactically aware, we have to be physically fit, we have to be technically talented. So we have to work on all these things. We have to work hard in games, and it's making that clear to the players so they know what is required of them, so that they can deliver in each game against each. So each game is the objective is there with the underlying knowledge of that's our goal for the season. And I think with that clarity, with that communication, there comes that cohesion and that real improvement in performance overall.
Absolutely. And I think to add to that element of purpose and the individual players buying into that or feeling like that purpose is also theirs, because there's lots of examples where it may be the coaches or the leader's idea that this is what we're going to achieve. But if the players don't buy into it, if they don't make it their own, then why or how can they push themselves to constantly improve?
Definitely.
As an entrepreneur who's achieved a number of successes, how important is strategy, both in terms of understanding it in a working context and also implementing it and building on it?
That's a really good question, actually. So I think my interpretation, let's say, of what strategy is might be different from the mainstream view of what strategy is. So let's go with what the mainstream view of strategy is, and that's usually centered around some kind of plan or a goal, for example. So strategy, whatever way you look at it, it is one of the fundamental things in business. And the more that you really learn and study about strategy, I mean, it's a topic of mine that I'm deeply passionate about and spend a lot of time researching and understanding. But that's for my own personal gain. The fact of the matter is, it is vitally important in a business to provide, a robust reference point. There's many facets to business, and it is a really complex landscape when you look at any business, even the smallest of businesses. And understanding where strategy fits into that mold is really important, because it can really be the key differentiator between, even not between failure and success, but between ordinary success and extraordinary success. And, strategy can really be the winning combination for that. So understanding it is vitally important, but it's not easy to understand. So that's why you get this misunderstood view of what strategy might be. Understanding it is not easy. It is a complex area. So therefore, implementing it is not simple either. But at least acknowledging what it can do for you and how you can implement it is really important to any business. So a lot of the time, it's the word is kind of, it's a bit of a verbal tick for people. People will say, "Oh, I've developed a marketing strategy," or they'll give you a document and say, "Here's my marketing strategy." And a lot of the time, there is no strategy in that document. It's just a plan or an overarching approach to something, and that's where a lot of the time the word is misunderstood and misused, and therefore it cannot be utilised to its full extent. But when you really understand the power and what strategy is, and it's quite simple in its own statement, but when you understand that and then how to apply it, that's where the complexity comes in. And it's hard work. Actually, strategy is really hard work, and that's why a lot of the time it's oversimplified and under-delivered. But don't let me say anything controversial. So, but yeah, it's fundamentally important. Strategy is so important. Like I say, not necessarily the difference between failure and success, because it can be, but also the difference between success and, as I say, extraordinary success.
Okay, so the purpose of these sessions is to help people or business owners or business leaders to navigate this sort of challenging time that we're all experiencing. And I want to keep you on strategy just for a minute longer, because you said it is it's a very complex thing. However, you said that it could be described in quite simple terms. So for anybody that may be out there that may be struggling a bit, how would you sum up strategy?
So for me, strategy is, and it's a very simple statement, but as I say, it's how to do it off the back of it, is the coordination of action to overcome a challenge. That is strategy. And I could talk you through many examples of how that works, but it is about the challenge that the business faces, and it's really been scrutinizing what is that. And this is, I've been in boardrooms many times where challenges are not discussed, risks are not discussed, and these are the businesses that are really at risk, because not acknowledging your challenges and then coordinating the action, and that is strategy. So coordinating a set of actions to overcome a challenge. That's what strategy can be defined as. So if you take that statement and then look at your business and say, what are the key challenges that we face now, in the medium term and in the long term, and then we develop a set of coherent actions to mitigate or overcome those challenges, that is then doing strategy. And there's so much that sits around the outside of that, and I could sit here and talk about it for hours. Okay, but for me, that statement, that is what strategy is: the coordination of action to overcome a challenge.
For anyone who doesn't have necessarily a clear sort of focus, or they haven't got their strategy to where they want it to be, where can they go to get some help? What could they be doing?
Yeah, so again, when you use the word strategy, there's not many people that would define it in the same way that I just have. So actually going out there, you will, if you type, the most common one is people talk about the vision, the mission, strategy.
Yes.
Get your vision, get your mission defined, and that's your strategy. Well, actually, no, that's your vision and your mission, and that's what we call a business framework. Like I said, understanding your challenges, identifying them, understanding them, creating action to overcome that. You're going to be taking risks at some point. You're going to be pushing boundaries. All of this is not easy. That's why when we talk about real strategy, the coherent set of actions to overcome a challenge, people avoid that because people don't want to talk about challenges. They want to talk about blue sky thinking. That's another misguided judgment about the word strategy. We talk about blue sky, blue ocean, and all these kind of things. Big fluffy statements that people put out. It's not strategy. Strategy is hard. It's difficult. It's challenging because it's about overcoming your key challenges as a business, and that is why it's so fundamentally important, and how it can be a key differentiator, because you are focusing in a laser-like way on your most pressing challenges, and you are potentially subverting the current focus of, you imagine sitting in a boardroom and telling the marketing director that we're now no longer doing their pet project because we're now focusing on this challenge, and overcoming this challenge means that we're no longer moving forward with that. It can create a sense of imbalance in the boardroom. People don't want that kind of confrontation. They don't want those challenges being brought in. But actually, in order for a business to really differentiate itself, to really succeed, it really needs to focus in on those challenges and do whatever it takes to overcome them. And that can be the real value that you can see within proper strategy. It might be a bit mind-blowing when I say that, because it's not a commonly accepted concept. But after many years of studying and working in business and applying that, I think that is, go back to the old statement: if you can't describe something simply, you don't understand it well enough. And to be able to summarize what strategy is in that brief statement, I think gives you a clear indication of a level of understanding around the topic.
And part of my reason for inviting you on was because I didn't want sort of the run of the mill, and I knew that your insight on strategy would be really, really helpful and useful to a number of people. So, yes.
Controversial, maybe.
Well, we'll wait and see what comments come back in terms of the controversial nature. So, what are some of your inspirations? Why are you such a student of strategy? Where has this passion and this love for strategy come from, would you say?
The passion for strategy has come from intrigue more than anything else, and my desire for self-development. So I referenced at the start of the call my time at National Grid. I got to work with some fantastic. I was very young when I did that, so still very wet behind the ears, let's say. But I had exposure to some really significant projects, and B, some really fantastic people that really opened my eyes to the potential. So it was my first. I went from my first office job straight into this kind of environment. So, and it just made me thirsty for more. So that was where the intrigue came from, because it was, you start seeing all of these complex scenarios that you've never really encountered before, and that creates intrigue. And that's where then, when you work with these people who are a lot older, more experienced, who guide you in the right way, and I'm very grateful for all of that guidance, but it does create this, it kind of sparks this passion, and that's where it comes from, really. So then you apply that, and the more experience you gain, you can apply it more, and the more you apply it, the more success you bring, and the more you want to find out, because you never stop learning. Any high achiever is a lifelong learner. I don't put myself in the high achiever category, but I'm definitely a lifelong learner and want to continue to develop my skills and understanding, because that was I wanted to push forward in my career.
Yeah, and I think we're definitely kindred spirits when it comes to that. And I've recently started describing myself as a learning and development geek, because I am fascinated and I'm just so hungry to continue learning and developing, but also sharing that information and working with our clients and being able to see those differences and changes. So yes, I completely, all of that resonates really, really strongly with me. The last 3 months have been rather difficult for everybody. We've been in lockdown. The business landscape has completely changed. And I wondered if there was any examples of resilience in terms of business owners that you'd seen, or if there was any developments in any of the work that you're doing via your Chitzo organization, as to how you've seen people navigate, or some of the innovative things that are happening out there. So if you could share any thoughts, that'd be amazing.
Yeah, I mean, this is the word unprecedented has been used over and over again, and it really is an unprecedented time for many people for different reasons. So, from a business perspective, things are challenging because the economy has ultimately almost ground to a halt. It's challenging from a personal perspective because people have been put into this lockdown scenario that they're not used to. So mentally, it's been a struggle for many people, physically and emotionally. So I think everybody has, shown a level of resilience that maybe they didn't realise they were capable of, because just to get through such a significant upheaval in people's lives has been immense. And then if you layer on top of that, from a business perspective, certainly in the SME landscape, what a challenging time, an uncertain time, and that's where anxiety, doubt, and all other issues start to creep in. But we've talked about mindset today as well, from a sporting perspective, but also, mindset is very important. Positivity is hugely important. That resilience, people have to dig deep. People are put under pressure, and apart from a sporting analogy, I always look at military analogies as well, when possible. So, you think about soldiers on the front line when they're being, there's no amount of training that you can really put yourself under that you can be prepared for when you get put out into some environment where you've got people shooting at you. And it's that resilience that people suddenly find a level of resilience that they never knew they had. And I think a lot of people are managing to get through with this underlying kind of spirit that maybe they've never had to call upon, because maybe times haven't been as challenging as they are now. Maybe people haven't had to ask themselves those difficult questions that they're now having to ask themselves and put their businesses to the test. Generally, I think there's so many people, not that I'm avoiding specific references, but just to see the way that people have innovated. There's so many different, the most simple thing is look at the way people have transitioned to doing things online. So yoga classes, fitness classes, I've seen art classes. We support a lot of charities with Chitzo. We've seen them transfer to online quizzes, cocktail masterclasses, just to continue to try and drive some revenue for, charities do so much fundamentally great work. And it's so difficult because a lot of that work usually comes through events, fundraisers, and other things that people are partaking in that at the moment we just can't do. So people are innovating, people are changing, and it might drive some new normal. We keep talking about this new normal. I think there will be a level of change that stays with us even after we return back to, being able to be more free with the way we move around, with the way we interact with each other, etc., etc. Some of the things that we've adopted during lockdown, we will probably keep, certainly in the medium term, if not in the long term as well.
Could you tell us a bit more about Chitzo? Because I'm conscious that I haven't asked you about it yet.
Yeah, no, that's fine. So ultimately, Chitzo is there to help people find things to do. Everybody's social needs are different, and most people's social needs change on a day-to-day basis. So today, you could be looking for, professional networking. Tomorrow, you could be looking for family activities. Sunday, you could be looking for places to go for Father's Day, for example. So your needs will change on a day-to-day basis. What we've developed is a platform that will cater for all of those different scenarios, from arts and literature, hobbies and crafts, through to bars and restaurants, through to sports and physical, through to professional and business events. Whatever people have going on, it's a quick, free and easy platform for them to promote to people that are looking for things to do. And in essence, that's what it is. We've got an underlying vision of helping to strengthen and rebuild communities. That could be your local community. It could be your vegan community. It could be your surfing community, or it could be your particular business community. Whatever community you identify with, we want to provide a platform that will help strengthen and rebuild that by bringing people together. by raising the profile of whatever it is you've got going on and reaching a group of people that may not have known about it previously.
So my last question, because I've really, really enjoyed our time, and I just wondered if you had any other information that you wanted to share with any of our listeners. So anybody that may be a business owner, as you mentioned, strategy and fitness and health and events. Is there anything from a sort of business perspective that you would like to share?
Yeah, so much. I think, to keep it simple, this has given us, it's been a very challenging time, but what it's also offered us is the opportunity to reflect, plan, and really focus on the way forward. And I think it is about planning. The more you can plan, there's that age-old saying of prior preparation and planning prevents poor performance. I love that phrase, and there's a variation on a theme there, but we won't say that one on this show. But any planning and structure that you can bring to your business, it will just pay dividends, and that's, if you think back to the start of the conversation about me being in project management at the start of my career, that's probably been ingrained into me about planning, but it is true for any aspect of any business or any function with any business. It doesn't matter whether it's marketing, finance, operations, IT. Within every function, planning is so important. It gives you so much structure, and it gives you a solid foundation for your execution, then whatever that might be, as your business as a whole or any particular function within your business. Planning is really important, and a lot of people, and I only say that because a lot of people forget that and they overlook it, and things are so busy that they get caught up in the day-to-day and they forget to plan and they trip over things, and we're all guilty of it. And I've missed opportunities because I didn't plan certain things properly. It's really important to plan, and then obviously just from a strategy point of view, just keep hold of that saying. Strategy is the coordination of a set of actions to overcome a challenge. And if you focus on your challenges, whatever they might be, and coordinate a set of actions to overcome them, then you can't go far wrong.
That's great. And thank you so much for your time, Richard. It's been a real pleasure.
Likewise. Thanks for having me, Kingsley, and hope people enjoy it.
We thoroughly enjoyed making this session, and for more information on our guest speakers, please see the links in the description. And to learn more about the Kinetic PD team and how we help organisations embed the psychology of elite sport in their teams, visit our website at kineticpd.co.uk. And it just leaves me to say, we are stronger together, enjoy the journey, and stay safe.